she was expressing, your God, your church doesn't allow someone like me and my faith, like my faith doesn't count.
For those willing to listen, learn, and have eyes to see and ears to hear, this is the Nonpartisan Evangelical, where we're challenging the mindset of right-wing Christianity and encouraging people to have their minds renewed and hearts transformed. Let's have better conversations about the life modeled in the Bible so we can truly tell the world God is not mad at you. This is the Nonpartisan Evangelical Podcast at npepodcast.com.
Okay, we're live. It is Friday Night Live.
Yeah. Not our usual Saturday morning.
No, and it's, we had said we were going to do cocktails with Paul and Ashley, and there is absolutely no way that I could or should drink a cocktail right now. I'm going to stick with water. It's been a week.
It's been a week?
Yeah. So
by that you mean it's been a little bit of a trying week?
It's been a trying week. It's been just feels like maybe ending this week with so much fatigue just about the world around us.
Sorry,
and then
I'm
also
moving the camera a little bit. Yeah,
just personally, dealing with pretty significant life issues in our family and our household, and we can talk about that. But so not doing alcohol yet. I'm just sticking with water.
Yeah. We got a little bit different shot today. We're moving around, and so I like your Frez Yes tribute beer in the background.
Yep.
Blonde ale, right?
Strawberry blonde.
Strawberry blonde.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, which I joked with our kids. So in 2016, when I was just finishing my last year at the city of Fresno, during the Frez Yes festival that year, which I think was around like June, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But thank you, Tioga Sequoia. They did this like tribute beer to the Swearingen strawberry blonde ale, and I told my kids at the time it was my legacy. And it probably
sure was.
Probably is not too much of an overstatement. Like, what did I accomplish as mayor? Well,
you got a beer.
I did get a beer. I didn't get a park named after me, I didn't get a building, but I got a one-time like tribute beer, so. Could
be worse.
I guess so.
Could be worse.
I'm not complaining. It was a delicious beer. So. Anyway, so it's Friday. We're grateful for folks who will just tune in for a little bit, hang out with us for a few minutes, or maybe catch this later in the week when we post it on the interweb. So I'm Ashley, this is Paul, and I'm here as an observer, onlooker, supporter of Paul, who's the Nonpartisan Evangelical. And this is just kind of our weekend review. And, if you're not familiar with the things that Paul has been talking about and posting about on the Nonpartisan Evangelical, first of all, you're missing out. So for sure, you should go to npepodcast.com and get on the Insiders email list and go to wherever you subscribe to podcasts and subscribe to the Nonpartisan Evangelical, because your content just keeps getting better and better. But it really is the passion, the desire of your heart, our lives together, to just see like authentic expression of like real God stuff, not man-made, not, kind of a religious thing that you and I both grew up in. Mm-hmm. But really seeing what it looks like for the love of God to move in a pure way. We believe it is totally transforming of all of society, not just individual lives. And boy, that's not exactly what we see in the Christian church, the Evangelical Church of America today. So you decided you would strike out and try to speak out against that.
Yeah, and see if we could actually give people an opportunity to be on a journey to change something. I did want to jump in, and I met Daniel this week.
Yeah.
And I didn't get his permission to tell everybody this, so I'm not going to identify him any more than by his first name. But he said we had a chance to connect via Zoom. And he said, well, I wanted to connect first off because I always listened to you on the radio doing sports talk for years while I was growing up. Yes, now I feel old. But he said, then I discovered you were doing the Nonpartisan Evangelical. So he said, I took 2 weeks and listened to every podcast you had done, read every blog, OD'd on Paul Swearingen Nonpartisan Evangelical. And now he was a big fan. And so we spent some time talking about, sort of what is the journey that I've been on. And, he was asking some theological questions and so it's just really gratifying. And particularly as we did the subscribe to Apple Podcasts last week, the review on Amazon this week. I just had just so much great feedback from so many of you who are just saying, thank you. Finally, there's somebody in the evangelical church willing to say what many of us are feeling, that this idea that you have to be Republican, you have to be a conspiracy theorist, you have to follow these sort of alt-right websites to be a good evangelical Christian, just aren't true. And that actually God is trying to give us a chance in this season to think different, is what Steve Jobs used to say. I know you're a grammarian, so you like differently better.
I still can't handle it. I'm like, put an LY.
Steve Jobs was pretty smart, though.
You probably can say it however you want.
So I like that idea of think different and giving people a chance to say what you learned, what we learned every day growing up in sort of that staunch conservative evangelicalism isn't necessarily the way the church has always thought. It's actually a very new theological standpoint, and we don't believe it's the one that God prefers in this season, or where God is trying to take followers of the creator of the universe.
So you started Nonpartisan Evangelical. Now it's been a year and a half ago. And, we honestly didn't know what to expect, and for us, it's just important to put this message out there and to create a space. And there are probably many other spaces like this out there in the whole entire world. But
yeah, we're trying to connect with
with other people who are really, really committed to seeing just a pivot away from the sort of the political church of America, which is kind of funny because I've served in elected office. I certainly have a high value for public service, and I'm not afraid of a few political skirmishes here and there. And you've pastored a church. We love the church. We love government service, and and understand politics. And we're looking at the way these things have come together. And it's so magnified in our own community. We live in Fresno, California, right in the middle of the state. It has in the past been considered the conservative, sort of the shiny belt buckle of the Bible Belt of California, that, and the far right kind of thing. That is changing for sure. But anyway, we see this so much in our own community. And then, of course, we're reflecting on what's happening all around our country. And we are living in just an incredibly intense time. And I will, kind of just finish this little piece by saying, I think it's important to just acknowledge how absolutely fatiguing and trying it is to live in this season, and to try to be partnering in some positive change. Like this week really kind of kicked the snot out of me, I'll just say. And I probably would use a different word than snot, but
well, we can do that. I, as a pastor, I used to always say a cuss word a day keeps religion away.
True.
Which religion in the negative part of the term of living by a set of rules rather than what Christianity really ought to be, which is a relationship with God and with man. But,
so, by the way, so when I was in the city of Fresno, like you don't live in a very political world for too long without picking up a bad habit or two.
Okay.
And so I decided my vice would be cussing. And so if I had to, I had to pick up a vice. It was either going to be like alcohol or cussing. So I went with cussing because I figured it was like less impactful to my life. And so there are just some things that can only be expressed with 4 letters. Like that's just the truth, right?
Right.
So anyway,
darn.
I would like, maybe have a little streak every now and then, and people would look at me and be like, "Your husband's a pastor." I'm like, "I know. He told me I should talk like this." It keeps the religious demons away. My pastor, who's also my husband, told me to say that.
Well, and it goes to the point that none of this is about behavior, that the story of Christ wasn't about, okay, I've come to give you a new list of rules to follow. I'm going to do away with the old rules, and here's the new list. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with any one word. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain didn't mean you can't say hell or damn it or worse words, which I do like to say from time to time, particularly when I hit my thumb with a hammer on those rare moments when I'm using a hammer. But what it meant was don't use God's name to curse people. The reason we don't say God damn it is because the idea in the days the commandments were written is that people, when they were offended, would say, God damn you. And they were calling a curse from heaven onto people. And so the commandment was don't do that. It wasn't don't say the S word or the F word or an F-bomb. Now, those can be sin because they violate relationship with somebody or something, but the words themselves are not inherently evil.
So we did not have this on the list of things to talk about.
I know, but it's kind of an interesting topic.
So if you were wondering if it's okay to cuss, you can love God and cuss.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Well, everything is ultimately a heart condition. And so if I'm yelling the F word out of severe unhealthiness, then now it's something that I need to look at and change. But if it's,
there you go.
If I'm totally okay and I can drop an F-bomb from time to time.
In all of the important things in life right now, if this was on your mind and you were worried about this, if you're one of the people watching this going, gosh, I just feel a little bit lighter having had Paul and Ashley shed light on this, then you're welcome.
Yeah.
But probably
because
not.
But it goes to the freedom that we're talking about, and that Jesus said that he came to give sight to the blind and set the captives free.
Yeah.
He wanted to relieve people of the bondage of a religious code. And Christian evangelicalism has just put a new code on people. And you have to agree with this ideology. You have to be against this sin and against this sin and against this sin. None of that is what Christianity is actually about. And certainly not whether you say the word shit or not. That is not what it's all about.
There you go.
Sorry, I said that, but not sorry.
No, but you know what? That is really the point, and that gets us kind of back on track. And just the God that we see portrayed today by the American Evangelical Church, I would break it down a little bit farther and say the white Evangelical Church, like the God that we see on display is so different from what you're expressing. And that's really what NPE is all about. So let me just also remind folks, if you haven't subscribed yet, go to wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe. npepodcast.com is the website. And we actually did have something we wanted to tee up for a little bit of discussion today. But before I do that, I want to just thank people who wrote a book review this week. So when Joseph Comes to Town, when the religious right becomes
religiously wrong,
what he said, that's the book, and had some great reviews.
Oh my gosh, such cool reviews.
Yeah, that was really awesome. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and really love that. Now, you were talking about it being a week. Like, we personally had a heavy week this week.
You know what? It's gosh, there are just so many times during this week when I just thought to myself, I cannot believe all the things that are going on. There's no way that so many things can fly around without them completely colliding and like blowing up in our faces. So, so our son had surgery on Tuesday, which was
Monday, wasn't it?
No,
it was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday, okay. Which he's okay, which is great. And we're so grateful for the Dr. Thaxter and the team at Spock. And like, thank God that, to me, it was really a provision that we were able to get him cared for really quickly, and be in good hands. But
of course, we're being put through the ringer by the insurance company, so pray for our insurance company.
Yes. Well, don't worry. I can handle your
Oh, okay. All right.
I got that. Don't worry about it. But anyway, so he had a sports injury, and it was also, something that's going to really create problems for his mobility in the long term. And so we're just taking advantage of COVID and everything being shut down to get him cared for, but it's a pretty significant deal. So that was happening. And then our daughter moved back today to Southern California to go to college. So we are literally like packing up her stuff, figuring out how to get it down there. We need to stay up here with Sam, going down tomorrow to help her move. And like, oh my God, just like the world around us, the day job, all that kind of stuff. It's been crazy.
Yeah. And are they going to school in class? Are they not? Maybe our son is, and our daughter's not, and just when is all this stuff going to start? And of course, then you see the case numbers climbing. And today we heard a teenager died of COVID, the first one in California, in the Central Valley. I mean, this is just heavy stuff we're having to deal with. And still people saying, let's not wear a mask, let's open everything up. It's just a crazy time.
And this is what is so brutal, is that on the same day that we had local elected officials calling a press conference, and these were not elected officials who are education, like school superintendent, anything like that. They're general purpose government officials, a couple of city council members, past mayor of our bedroom community, etc., doing a press conference talking about how schools should open, which I understand. Like, if schools could open safely, totally get it. Like, everybody wants that to happen. but they're out there on this, open the schools, kids don't get COVID, and quite literally on the same day, a 15-year-old dies in our community from COVID.
And the day after, Herman Cain, a former Republican presidential candidate, died, who recently posted a tweet sort of mocking masks at the Tulsa presidential rally. He died of COVID this week. So it's just, it's crazy times. And then I don't know where you want to go next, but we had this YouTube group of doctors come out and again say hydroxychloroquine is the savior of it all. And if there wasn't some conspiracy to keep it from us, we would all be well and everything would be good if we just all took hydroxychloroquine. And immediately, every Christian I know, every conservative I know is retweeting this video. And one of the main doctors was a woman that apparently believes something about demons having sex with girls
Humans in their sleep
is what brings female problems.
Yeah. So definitely some, questionable science.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And I don't know too much more about it than that. And trust me, I wish, I don't care what drug it is. My doctor the other day was telling me that this remdesivir is showing some promise as a treatment. Whatever treatment it is fine. I was just questioning why the need, why is there this desperate hope and need for hydroxychloroquine to be the miracle drug that saves us all? And again, it's like masks. It's something totally nonpartisan that has become this major partisan right-wing evangelical issue. And I just keep saying, guys, why is our mindset in this place? Why do we need this to happen so badly? And so that got me, I think we were just looking at 105 comments on that post
People
alone.
want to talk about this.
Where I was saying, my post was, if crazy, nutty YouTube video comes out that supports my narrative, I'm all in. And why is Facebook trying to stop this video? Why is censorship happening on this video? Scientific people like the CDC or the FDA say a story that doesn't meet my narrative, suddenly I'm screaming fake news. So why are we so quick to run to even fringe science that supports our narrative and absolutely ready to reject sort of real science? And yes, they're learning and trying to learn it as we go. I'm not saying they're getting it all right. Some of the things they're getting wrong, but why are we so quick to run to even wacky fringe stuff that supports our narrative and immediately reject scientific stuff that doesn't go against the story we so badly want in our hearts?
All right. So if you're just joining us and you're kind of like, what are Paul and Ashley doing? And what, hydroxychloroquine and what's this and what's that? Anyway, welcome.
We're
first
debriefing.
Of all. Yeah, we're debriefing the week. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. Or you may catch this later in the week if you don't see it live on Friday. It is Friday, July 31st when we're recording this. And we just like to do a little weekly recap, focusing on the things that Paul, is the nonpartisan evangelical, brings to light, whether through a Facebook Live or a post of some sort or a podcast. And then we just like to hang out and kind of share with each other and then with you guys what our week was like, living in these crazy, crazy times. And I think before going to your post of the week, which I really was excited to hear more about, actually, there were two things I thought were really cool I want to talk about.
Okay.
But anyway, I just want to put words on this. This is a fatiguing time that we're living in. I can't even begin to imagine, even in the, just surveying American history over the last 100 years, there are only probably a small handful of other as significant times as the ones that we're living in. And boy, it's just fatiguing, and it's okay. Like, I do a weekly call with CBOs, about 250 to 300 CBO community organizations in the Fresno County area. And I asked everybody this week, how are you feeling? And it was a range from some were really enthusiastic, et cetera, and finding great camaraderie and trying to solve this problem together and respond to COVID, et cetera. And then my favorite word was just one word: crusty.
Oh, wow.
I thought, you know what? I can
actually
appreciate that. Things are feeling a little crusty. But anyway, so it's okay. And this is part of what we wanted to do, is just create a space where, you can hear other folks kind of saying the same thing. We're real frustrated with what's going on in the American Evangelical Church. We think God looks, sounds, feels, acts very differently than what we're seeing in the church. And boy, the way he is being represented right now complicates all these other hard things. So that's what you write about. That's what you talk about.
Yeah.
So last week you mentioned that you had a blog in your mind. You actually produced it this week. It was a modern day parable. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, it was back in the biblical times. There were these religious people called the Pharisees, and they would come and ask Jesus questions. And I call them trap questions. When back in my days of working in the media, we called them, "How long have you been beating your wife?" questions. They're questions not meant to gain information. They're trying to trap you into something so that they can get a narrative. And so the Pharisees would ask these questions of Jesus, and they didn't really care what his answer was. They weren't trying to gain information. They just wanted to be able to put a label on him on one side of an issue or another. So they would come with cultural questions like tax collectors were a big one, and Roman taxation. And so they would say, Jesus, are you for taxation or against it? And again, they didn't care what his answer was. If he said, I'm against it, then they could go to the Romans and say, hey, this guy's seditious, you need to take him out. And if he said he was if he was for it, then they could tell his people like, oh, he's not for you, he's for the Roman government. They just wanted to be able to put a label on him. And that's a lot of what our culture is today, if particularly for sort of this partisan evangelical mindset. If I can call you a liberal, if I can call you a Democrat, if I can call you a Marxist, if I can call you a socialist, if I can slap a label, then I don't have to consider any content other than that ever again. I don't have to consider anything you say. And so quite often, as I'm trying to engage people in discussion, I will get Christians that come along and say, well, what about Marxism? What about socialism? And so having a discussion about a false meme posted this week, I was approached by somebody that says, well, you went to protest for Black Lives Matter. And how do you feel now that you know Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization that is against the traditional family? And so my modern day parable is all about Jesus having this Facebook conversation with these modern day Christians saying, Jesus, are you for Marxism or are you not? Are you for the traditional family or are you not? And all of this stuff is based on somewhat false premises. And I'm not saying necessarily that, the Black Lives Matter doesn't say there's some Marxism on their post, but it's the desire to be able to put a label on something and then not be able to consider it. So in the parable, basically, it's Christians firing questions at Jesus. And I use actual quotes that people threw at me on Facebook and put it into this parable of how it would look asking those questions to Jesus. And it's pretty brutal, pretty fascinating to it comes out. And in the end, they're basically questioning whether Jesus is really a Christian at all or not. Because if you're not standing strong for the traditional family, then you've missed it. Even though the Bible really doesn't even talk about the traditional family. The families in the day when the Bible were written were extended families, and they all lived together and took care of each other's kids. And it truly was a village that took care of the children. So the traditional family has been a white evangelical invention in America that says the only family that really counts is mom, dad, and kids living in a house together. And that's not even biblical. And that's something that we're now saying, if you're against that in any way, and I don't really think anybody's really against that, but some people are saying, well, maybe that's not the only family that we're going to give credit to for loving their kids. And saying that suddenly becomes some anti-Christian statement. So anyway, it's a good blog.
So definitely check that out. So where do people find that?
NPEpodcast.com.
NPE
It's called Trap Questions Asked by Evangelicals.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're doing like a Zoom cocktail party this weekend or some kind of like social gathering and you want to like have a really shocking moment where you get everybody's attention with this startling kind of modern day parable, print it out, grab it, and read it to folks and just see what kind of reaction they have.
And the interesting thing is I think we're in a season where our hearts are being tested. And so I actually think what Jesus would say in that is like, okay, so you see the word Marxism on the BLM website. Are you going to let that stop you from having a heart to stand with people of color? Or are you going to let that give you an excuse to not?
Yeah.
Quite often, Jesus would say offensive things to followers of his to see if that offensive thing would then drive them off and give them an excuse to go, and if they were only in it for the benefits. And so I really think part of what that statement is all about in this season is God saying to us, like, I really care about what the communities of color are saying right now. And I'm asking you to mourn with those who mourn and lean into their pain. But the test is, here's this thing about Marxism on the website. Are you going to let that give you an excuse to walk away from these people I'm asking you to care about. And unfortunately, what has been heavy for me this week is I was talking in my Facebook Live on Monday is we're like, yeah, okay, good. That's our excuse. We don't have to care about this
Well,
anymore.
and that was your second post of the week that I really wanted to make sure that we talked about. And you actually quote Isaiah 22:4, and you say like, hey, what's in that verse is like the writer saying, man, let me just grieve for my people. Like in you're having kind of that experience right now and mourning over what you see going on in the evangelical church.
Yeah. Well, part of what's been going on with our son having surgery is you and I are having to get up in the wee hours of the morning to give pain medication.
It's like having a newborn again. We're on a 4-hour rotation. So, and you have been getting the 1 a.m. Medication drop. I've been doing 5 a.m. So you've definitely had the shorter end of that stick. I do 9, you do 1.
Yeah.
I do 5.
So I got up at 1 o'clock on Wednesday morning and laid back down after I had taken care of our son, and I was just wide awake. If you've ever had that experience, and so I thought, well, maybe I should get up and use this time then, because I don't want to just sit here and roll around in bed for 2 hours. So I got up, and it was just this sense of like, wow, I'm so hurting for my people. And it kind of started on Monday, and I did a Facebook Live, but just this week I've been like, wow. And so I began to think sort of this thought of like, our heart is sick in the evangelical church. We sort of seen this building for a while, but I think we're pretty heart sick. And I'm starting to wonder if like irreparably so, like we're when the tests come, are you going to fight to have a Sunday morning gathering or not? You know, we're always choosing our own comfort and our own desires rather than living sort of this sacrificial life of Jesus. And so Isaiah 22:9, he just says, don't try to comfort me. I'm just heartbroken and I just want to grieve over my people. And so, yeah, I've just been in that sort of season. Now, I'm a hopeful guy. And in the middle of tragic times in the book of Jeremiah, this verse comes out that says, God has plans for us to prosper us and not harm us, plans to give a hope and a future. And so I really believe what is sort of transpiring in this time is we get to say, well, maybe this sort of evangelical thing is running its course. The millennials are not coming to the church anymore. They're going away. And so what's going to happen in this next generation? And is God doing something new as far as church goes? And is even COVID a great opportunity? I did a Facebook Live with our friend Tim Neufeld this week, and we were talking like this could be the opportunity for us to completely rethink what a church community gathering is. And rather than getting all uptight and oppressed and calling the governor a tyrant, what if we were like, Holy Spirit, give us some creative wisdom and new creativity to just rethink from the ground up what a church community really looks like. And so my hope is, even as I'm grieving and sad for the sickness of our hearts, I'm like, well, maybe this is the time God's going to show us something new, and we get to go into a new season, which is exciting.
Yeah, I was having a conversation this week with a colleague who does not come from a traditional white evangelical background, and involved in a lot of civic work in the greater Fresno region, Central Valley of California, and known to be a bit of an agitator or whatever, but of course, because she's trying to lift up the issues, the concerns, and the needs of the marginalized and people who have really been looked over and kind of whatever. We've really left a lot of people in the wake of in the Fresno area, in the Central San Joaquin Valley. There's just a lot of people who have been left behind and left out. So that's been her life's work. It's very significant, and I marveled at how she was really just kind of expressing like, man, like your God, your church doesn't allow someone like me and my faith, like my faith doesn't count. Right. The way I connect with God doesn't count, because it does not look like what you're experiencing in your church. And it was such a powerful statement. And I just thought, dear God, like, time out, Yeah. If the message that we're sending in the conservative, Republican, evangelical church is that her faith doesn't matter, no wonder we're in the mess that we're in. No wonder. Yeah. I mean, it's frankly a wonder we haven't gotten here sooner, and that people are not more upset and speaking out and protesting and that sort of thing. Like we really have got to stop and listen and hear people's hearts, and as you were saying, not just label them and then discount and disqualify their life's messages, their life's work, the way in which they've seen God in their lives that maybe is very, maybe very contrary to what the Republican Party wants. And yet it's every bit as much, God's love for them and his work in their life to help them accomplish something that they're working towards.
Yeah, part of the journey of my life has been, while I was growing up in a traditional staunch evangelical church life, I used to look around and say, wow, those people out there, those sinners that we knew were going to hell, well, I know they're going to hell, and I know their life is terrible because God's really angry at them, but they sort of look happy. And when I look at our people, we don't look very happy. We seem pretty mad and angry, and they look pretty happy. But I know they're going to hell, so I'll get the last laugh on them. But then the other thing was, I used to say, and it seems like they love people.
Yeah.
And it seems like we don't.
And there's just a lot of freedom, right? That we didn't experience that freedom.
Yeah. I looked at John Lennon, who we thought was a particularly bad sinner, and it's like, it kind of seems like he loves people. And so I remember as a kid even thinking, well, I know I can't because I'm a Christian, but I wish I could love people too.
Wow.
I truly.
Right? Like as a kid, just think about that thought for a second. Like, I'm not allowed to love people because I'm a Christian.
Yeah, that was how I translated what I was being told in my Christianity. And so I could see that we were angry and we didn't love people unless they came into our church doors. And I'm talking about the building we came in, not that church down the block.
Yeah.
They weren't okay. Only those in our building were okay. And some would say, oh, that's not true. But it's sort of the idea that you have to be us, and not just us. It's not just about following God. You have to follow Jesus in the way that we've interpreted the Bible very narrowly. And so it's a very, very exclusive religion. And I think the freedom that God is trying to say is your friend, her faith counts.
Yeah.
That Jesus came to connect us to God. Jesus didn't come to create this new religion that now you have to follow this set of rules to be right with God. He came to say, I want to point you to the Father, and you don't have to go through those Pharisees and those Sadducees and their list of rules to get to him. The creator of the universe actually just wants to be friends with you. And he's kind of okay with however we get there. We're going to figure it out together.
And that is ultimately the hopeful message here. So I know that it's, Friday when we're recording this at 6:45 and cocktail hour, and this is a little bit heavy. And I think we're saying that every weekend, wow, we jump on and talk about pretty heavy stuff. But hopefully we do so in a way that makes it more digestible. And we really are just trying to create a space for people to be able to connect and talk about these sorts of really pivotal societal issues. This is the time to talk about it. But that's the hopeful message, is that, having to speak truth into a community group, a cultural group that we've associated with our entire lives. It's not pleasant. It's not fun. It's not great being the, turd in the punch bowl of actually, we need to change what we're doing. We're kind of sucking right now. That's not a fun thing to do. But the only reason why I think I see you doing it and pushing in so hard on it is because there's something so much better beyond what we know today in the evangelical church. So it's worth it, right? If it takes kind of really deconstructing in order to reconstruct, man, it's going to be worth it, because the freedom, the hope, the optimism, the ability to love people, the actual relationship that Jesus does provide, wow, we're not even scratching the surface of that,
right?
Right. There's hope in that, hopefully, for people.
I had a conversation with a friend this week, and she was like, well, why aren't you just as hard on the people on the left? I'm like, because I'm talking to my people and I'm inviting them into a journey of freedom. And sort of the model I saw in Jesus is Jesus didn't say, Pharisees, you're bad, and Samaritans, you're bad too. And so tomorrow I'll talk about how bad the Samaritans are, but today I'm going to talk about how bad the Pharisees are. And then tomorrow I'll tell you what's good about the Pharisees and the good things they do. No, Jesus just kept banging on, and it wasn't about the individuals who were in this Pharisaical group. It was about the religious system. And he's saying, you people that are trapped in the system and are trapping others in it, you need to hear a different message. And the way I'm going to get that to you is I'm going to bang you over the head really hard with some really hard statements. And so that's a little bit of what we're modeling, is sometimes people are like, wow, ouch, that feels unfair. And I'm just really starting to figure out, like, yeah, that's kind of the model. That's kind of what we're doing. We're gonna pinch a little bit and then start to say, so where's your heart in that now? What does that do to your heart? Because Jesus once said to people, to get to heaven, you're gonna have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And a bunch of them said, okay, we're out. That's it. That's a statement too far.
Yeah.
And his whole point of doing that was, like, if I throw out a really hard thing to say, is that it? Or are you going to lean in to hear more? And I'm sorry to keep going on, but one of the things that I realized in the wee hours of the morning after giving the pain medication to our son is that is really what God has been preparing our household for, and me for. It's this time of being post-pastoral leader of a church, having a pulpit I need to maintain, to be able to your purpose. That's going to look like arrogance to some people. And so I think, yeah, it may look a little bit like arrogance, but it's just because I think really starting to figure out what the message is and the purpose and where we're going and the journey that I want to invite people on. That if you've ever had that moment of, like, maybe we don't have it all right, but you don't feel like there's permission to think different or think differently, I want to invite you to get on that journey to maybe explore thinking differently. And like our friend Daniel, see if there's not some freedom in starting to say, well, maybe I can love people that don't totally fit the model of what I believe is right and true.
Well, that was a good sermon you just preached.
No, thank you.
That was really good. You've convinced me. You know what? We should probably wrap up in the interest of time. It's Friday night at 5 o'clock, 5 minutes till 7. But thanks for tuning in. And, we just are committed to staying in touch every week and hanging out a little bit and inviting you into this conversation with us. If you're seeing this for the first time, please jump onto the website, npepodcast.com, sign up for the email newsletter, the insiders list, and also don't forget Patreon. So we do have a Patreon site, and we are asking for support there. $5.99 a month goes a long way. That is $5.99.
Yeah, not $599. Although you could do that if you'd like.
We would not be upset, but that is certainly not what we're asking. But really, just those dollars go to help us promote this content and try to connect with more people. Because ultimately, we want to be a part of a movement of seeing the things that we're bringing to the fore. We want to see those things changed for the better. We really believe that's God's heart for our community, our state, our nation, and we want to be a part of that. So a little bit of money that we raise, we put right back into making sure we try to extend the reach of the content at the Nonpartisan Evangelical. So consider partnering with us. And I know we had a few people sign up last week. So thanks for that. It's really cool. And make sure you subscribe. There are some fantastic podcasts that Paul, you're starting to get some really good, like, national level interviews. We put in a request to the governor to come on.
Wouldn't that be something?
We'll see if maybe it works for him to come on and talk about what's going on in the faith community and dealing with COVID and that kind of thing. There's some great podcasts on there, so be sure to subscribe. And if you haven't yet, get a copy of the book, Joseph Comes to Town.
It's out of arm's reach.
When the religious right goes religiously wrong. Read it and write a review on Amazon. That helps get the word out even more about the Nonpartisan Evangelicals.
Yeah.
So
we usually pray to finish.
We do usually pray to finish.
Yeah.
And he likes to keep his eyes open. I like to close mine. I think better when my eyes are closed, but you can pray however you want.
Okay. If you don't want to see me looking at the camera while I'm praying, you can close your eyes. But I just trying just to think of exactly what I want to pray. I just pray that there's somebody watching this today that maybe you're stuck in the place that we've been talking about, that you've been told Christianity has to look like this, this, and this, A, B, and C. That's it. There is no more discussion. We've determined what the Bible says, and it has to meet our standards, or else it's nothing else. And you thought, well, okay, I'm going to follow that because I want to be a good God follower. But gosh, I kind of wish I could love those other people out there too, and not in a love the sinner, hate the sin kind of way, but like actually love them and love who they are. And I just give you blessing and freedom to start to explore that journey. What would that look like? What would it happen if you opened the door just a little bit to hear people who love God and believe differently than you do, and those around you do? And what if you could really love people and weren't required to adhere to a strict ideology, weren't required to adhere to a strict partisanship to please God, but could really start to think of how could this be different? That you didn't have to be trapped by conspiracy theories and sort of crazy YouTube videos, but you could actually let Holy Spirit start to guide you into all truth, not be trapped by strange myths that come to our itchy ears from the teachers we seek out, but rather would be, what is God's heart for the season? And how can I walk this out well to love God, love my neighbor and my enemy as myself? So that's not much of a prayer. That's more of a declaration.
Oh, I still have my eyes closed, so it counts.
Yeah. So I bless you.
Yeah.
To start to seek out that journey.
Yeah. And I just agree with that. I do thank you, God, that you're with us. I thank you, God, that you know every single person who jumps onto this Facebook Live or it's recording, you know, right where we are at all times. And you know what's important to us. And I just pray, God, that you would make yourself known in a way that we could experience and realize. And Lord, I pray for people who would watch even a little snippet of this. God, I pray they would experience your love, that they would encounter you in a whole new, fresh way, maybe for the first time. And God, I just pray that you would help us to align with your heart. Help us to say yes to the things that you're doing. Help us not to turn a blind eye or turn up our nose or reject or mislabel what you are doing in this time. But let us be in alignment with it. Let us be carriers of hope and carriers of love and the true gospel of Jesus. And we thank you for your son. We thank you for his sacrifice so that we could be connected to you. And God, I just ask that anybody would hear this, would feel refreshed as a result of just tuning in for a few minutes. We just bless you. We bless them in your name, I pray.
Yeah. And I do pray over our health as a country and as a state and as a region of Central California, our health of our physical being, our health of our racial and socioeconomic inequality, if I can say that would be healed, that red lines that were set up legally and mentally, spiritually would be broken forever. And that the hearts of those who can't see where that healing can happen would be broken to see it happen. Gosh, I'm describing that so poorly, but heal the divides in our city, in our region, in our state, and in our country.
Yeah.
Break our hearts for the things that break your hearts, God, and don't let us take the bait of allowing labels to cause us to miss what you're doing in the season.
All right.
Amen.